Welcome to Your Town. I'm Marianne Leffel, your host today. We've got a great lineup. You're going to learn a little bit about everything today. My first guest is Michael Urquides.
Yes,
Mike.
yes.
And Mike is the fire chief for the Monterey Regional Fire District, which was a combination of two fire districts about 5 years ago, 4?
Yeah, 8 or 9 this year.
Okay,
Yeah,
time flies.
Yes, yes.
And I've done quite a bit of work with them through my volunteer work with the Monterey Special Districts. And I find fire to be one of the most fascinating things, not fire itself, but the topic of how fire is prevented and the safety things that we need to do. And so, Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thank you.
And I think when you go back to, I'm just going to go back to the interaction between two fire departments. That's a pretty big deal because you got two cultures and two groups.
Yes, yeah. And it is something that we continue to believe is going to be the trend in not only California but the nation. There's 4 components we always say, either with a contract or consolidation or merger, that prohibit it: power, politics, turf, and control. Right. So if we can get through those 4 components, it is the best for the end users, the taxpayers, the community at large, that over time, through attrition, less rolling stock, meaning less reserve fire trucks that are difficult to maintain and expensive. So it is not an easy task, because if it was, everybody would do it. But during the financial downturn in the economy, a lot of public entities looked at that. Law enforcement's done it very minimal, but in Monterey County Fire Service, a lot of consolidations, mergers, and contracts did take place in the last 10 years.
I think from a taxpayer standpoint, it makes nothing but good sense, because every time you have to pay for a whole line of chain of command, that's money that doesn't go to the end user for the most part. Plus you're building up pensions and other things. So
Yes.
if you can consolidate and make it work with one person and then down. Now, how big is that territory? It's huge, isn't it?
So we started as a 225 square mile fire district with 3 stations, and today we're at 7 stations and 400 square miles. And we now we're combined with the old Chular Rural Fire District. You know, we took them over in the 80s. Spreckles Community Service District, the San Lucia Conservancy District, the Mid-Carmel Valley Fire District, the Carmel Valley Fire District, and the former Salinas Rural. So a lot of governmental entities that came together through time and through a lot of hard work by all stakeholders. The community actually does lose some components of a smaller mom and pop organization. You know, Carmel Valley is an example. You know, they were a 1-station department that people could walk to their headquarters and talk to the fire chief. Well, the downturn of that is you're paying one fire chief and 1 station, and that comes with a big expense. And so, you know, you have to give to get. But the efficiencies of that model, we were able to have more staffing, additional paramedics, nicer equipment, redo the fire stations, make sure they're compliant to ADA. So we took those savings and reinvested them back to help the public. So that's why there's been very little complaints over time, that those dollars went back to make it more efficient. When they call 911, they get a better product. So it is give and take. It's give and take for the labor workforce. We took, you know, a higher PERS system that cost the taxpayers, and the employees conceded to a less of a PERS system, and it was a win-win for everybody. And so I think it's been successful. Now we'll look back, and I think if we looked at the amount of money we saved the taxpayers, I would easily say it's probably $5 million in this 9-year span.
And that's remarkable. I think and it's commendable that you were brave enough to even step off the cliff into that, because it is uncharted waters.
Yes, and I'm passionate about it. Matter of fact, when I was going to college, I did my master thesis on fire service consolidation in 2000 here in Monterey County at Golden Gate University. And so for me to be, you know, several years later as fire chief and actually conduct a consolidation, really my heart was in it. and I wanted to see it, succeed. So, now we're 9 years later, and I think everybody sees a better product.
Yeah, I think it's great. So we've had horrendous wildfires throughout the U.S. over the last few years, but predominantly in the state of California and a little bit north of us. And wildfire prevention is a huge piece of what you all do on a day-to-day basis. Is that seemingly coming together with other fire districts where some of the bugs are worked out of it?
Mary Ann, it really in Monterey County, we have such a different level of service. And Monterey County, not having a fire department, relies on volunteers, special districts, community service areas, and so they all have different financial components. Big Sur, Cashawa receive zero property taxes. So they have to go really fundraise in order to do fire prevention efforts. So you can imagine that's probably not higher in their priority. Higher is keeping fuel in the fire trucks, trying to get volunteers. Then you have other districts that get 24 cents on the dollar of property taxes, and they can do a lot of work. They can do community chipping programs. They can have inspectors to go out and do things. So we have such a different level of that in Monterey County. But you're right, the last 3 years has been devastating in California. And Mary Ann, we keep saying it can't get any worse than last year, and then we exceed that tenfold, and that's 3 years in a row. The insurance industry of California, they don't like paying billions of dollars of claims. And so they're making it harder and harder for residents in the unincorporated areas that are in wildland areas to get insurance. So they are now having to be more aggressive on cleaning around their homes before they get renewed. We do have a grant that we just received, and we're advertising it as we speak in our fire district for a community chipping program. We had funds 2 years ago. It was a great success. We just applied for another grant for next year, but you got to give to get. We cannot go on your private property and clean your property, but we can, if you put it at your curbside, we can come with chipping crews and dispose of it for you. And so it's, but you got to give to get. And many times, Mary Ann, people do not take advantage of that, but the pressure from the insurance industry to either clean around your home or they're going to drop you is every year getting harder and harder for folks throughout California, but really in these underserved areas. Fire departments are graded in California nationwide 1 through 10. And many of our volunteer departments in Monterey County, Cashawa as an example, is a 9. 10 means you don't have a fire station.
Wow.
So you can imagine the people paying their premiums in Cashawa. Then you come to our district, just up the road, and we're a 3. So you can see we're giving tremendous value. And Mary Ann, that was all based on consolidation. Carmel Valley residents used to be an 8 and a 4. After we consolidated, we became a 3 and a 3, meaning even if you don't have a hydrant, you get that great rating.
That's terrific.
So it was a great value for the residents, and that's an example of putting more troops on the ground, better equipment, same communication, same radios, same mapping, is we're coordinated where, probably the insurance industry says, yeah, it sounds great in theory, but when you're one and bigger, you have the depth of resources. And so the residents of Carmel Valley and the Monterey County Regional Fire District as a whole sees that benefit. But we're seeing homes that are very defensible, have built-in internal sprinkler systems, and still having difficulty. So usually what I have to do is write letters to their insurance carrier saying, these folks have done everything. We'll send firefighters out and do an inspection, and then we'll basically give them a report card, hoping the residents then can go to their underwriters and get insurance. And in California, unfortunately, residents are twofold. The PG&E, obviously infrastructure, and those claims and the lawsuits, the ratepayers are going to pay that, right? And then with the insurance increase, these fires are hitting everybody, in their pocketbook. And so California, we're going to have to do something to make communities fire safe. The drought has not helped. We're going in several years of drought. I think right now in Monterey County, we're still about 6.5 inches of rain, and we're going to be in February. So we are prepared again for an aggressive fire season next year. And so, to your original question, Marianne, yeah, it is. California's a year-round fire season now. And when I started my career in the fire service 32 years ago, my first fire season, was very distinct. We weren't going to fires, past November. And last year, the biggest fire in California history was December, right? Until this year, the Paradise Fire trumped that. But we are now year-round wildland. And I never thought we'd see that.
So, I mean, I totally admire what you all do, and I have come to appreciate that what you do fighting fires is just a small percentage, that so much of it is all of the paperwork, like you said, writing letters to people's insurance companies, or going out meeting with neighborhoods and telling people how they can do better. I remember several years ago, a friend who will go unnamed, who lived in the Carmel Valley district, told me she was complaining because you all had come on her property and told her to clean it up, or you were going to red tag her because she had so much overgrown trees. And she lived on the back, she backed to a canyon. And then this year she told me, she said, remember when I was complaining? This year I asked them to come and look and see if I could do anything better. And so I think if there's any upside, the population is waking up to the point that they have to take some personal responsibility, and they need a little input maybe of what they can do. But if they're told this should not be okay, then they'll take care of it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and when we look at Monterey County, since 2008, we've burned 157 homes to the ground. We had the Basin Fire that lost almost 60. We had the Sobranos Fire that almost lost, well, actually over 60. We had the year before that in Cachagua, we burned 12 homes up. And then the Morris Fire of 1987, where we burned 32 homes in Pebble Beach. So we've had fires here, and it's based on zip codes, the losses. So these underwriters are, looking at that when they're renewing the policies. But the law is clear in California in the Public Resource Code. You have to have a 100-foot clearance around your home in the unincorporated state responsibility area. So we do go out, and we've been doing it for years, doing these inspections. And we try to educate people. We're not trying to be, big brother and tell people to cut trees, but we're saying now is we're trying to help them out to have some evidence so they can maintain their insurance. And you're right, Marianne, what I've seen is go away to, can you do it twice a year? And so, yes, you're right, people are changing their mentality. We still do have neighborhood feuds. We do have folks that are saying we don't want it clear, we don't want it overly cut, and the homeowners associations are doing a good job of policing that, saying, hey, it's life now we're dealing with, property second, and the environment third, and that's sometimes hard for people. People would rather see the environment then property and then life, but really the way we look at it as a fire service is life, property, and environment when we triage.
So I have a very unscientific mind, the worst. But to me, and I am not a person who says there's no climate change. I believe that it's here. But I also see that the tussle between those who do not want to cut a tree because of that, or those who say clear the property because you've got a fire danger. But it seems to me that if you have a huge fire and all of that goes up in the air for a month at a time and it goes all over the world, that somehow we must be propagating more climate change just because of all of the residue that goes from these horrendous fires that are so big and impact forever, as opposed to I cleared one tree off my property that was touching my roof so that I hopefully don't get caught in a firestorm. It's kind of a head-scratching thing for me of how do we work through this, and can we use some common sense and not just be, this is black, this is white, and I'm not going to understand your position.
Yes, and now the state of California specifically is calling it such. They're calling it climate change investment grants. So they've recognized that. And they've put a lot of money this year. I think Governor Newsom's budget is probably $250 million. That's why we just applied for another grant 3 weeks ago in chipping. program. And the nice thing about a chipping program, we don't have to do CEQA. And CEQA does prohibit for us to do larger scale clearing projects. We just don't want to be in litigation on that. And so we do the low-hanging fruit. And the fire service as a whole is kind of taking that approach. We've had challenges in the past where we thought it'd be great to go out and clean, trails and neighborhoods, and then people question, where was our CEQA component, and then we're having to hire attorneys, and we firefighters want to do what's right, but we don't want to be in court and subpoenas and depositions. So we as a smaller fire district tend to go for the easier chipping grants and try to stay away from what people want to see, 4 bulldozer, wide blades cut through a mountainside. I think those days are over in California. And unfortunately, with cattle industry in Monterey County, that was our natural fire defense system, but we don't run many cattle anymore. So the natural grasses now are turning over to brush. And we look at aerial photos from the 60s till today, our grass crop is being consumed by heavy brush. And grass fires were easy to put out back in the day. But when you get the brush and that heat and the amount of ember production that travels in these communities, that's the challenge now. So our natural, and you see they bring goats in now to Fort Ord. You'll see goats out there. They're doing a great job, but they're doing, eating grass and some poison oak. But after 6 months, it comes back. Easy to control. It's those heavy urbanized areas where we were hitting that predominant brush, and you'll see a lot of dead pine trees now. It's starting to accumulate on the ground. They're starting to fall and decay. That's what scares us.
Those are just like that when they
Yes.
go, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you to come back another time because I know you've got another program I want to talk about, and we're about out of time. But I just, is there anything you can leave anybody with? Is there a website they can go to? Is there a person they could call if they're interested in following up?
Yes. The Monterey County OES has a website with Alert Monterey County. That's the first thing. People need to register for evacuation notifications. That's the first most important. They can register their cell phone, their home phone, to get the reverse 911 in the event we have to evacuate someone. The Ready, Set, Go program, again, that is available when you just put Ready, Set, Go in a search engine. That comes up, has great videos. CAL FIRE's website has great prevention education material. This day and age with the internet's great. Whatever component that you want to see, there's flyers, there's YouTube videos, and for us, it's the best way to get the information out to folks. And when in doubt, stop by your local fire station. Stop by and ask them what you can do to better be prepared to protect your home.
Okay. Chief Urquides, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining me, and we'll do this again in a couple months with your new business program.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Your Town. Don't go away. We'll be back in just a second. Thank you.